Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to Season 4 and episode number 616 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Thursday, April 3rd, 2025, post-alleged Liberation Day. And it is another April showers will bring May flowers day here at the Beaver Lodge. Cold and all that kind of stuff. Got a little snow and wet rain again yesterday. Fortunately, no additional ice storm. Supposed to be warm weather today. Supposed to be. At least that was the prediction yesterday. But with the cloudiness and dreariness and blah, not sure if we're going to get any of that. Today. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and psychictarot.ca. We have a bit of a packed show for you today because there's a lot that's going on. Surprisingly, it's not wall-to-wall tariff stuff because of certain developments, which is kind of nice. So we'll be able to bring you a couple of other things. But before we go any further, Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health today, sir?
Well, I woke up at 12:30. Went to bed at 10 o'clock, woke up at 12:30, fell back to sleep quickly, woke up again at 3:30, and here I am.
And here you are.
I laid in bed until 4 o'clock, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I just got up and went to the couch, put on the TV, and I was like, I was wide awake. So I'm actually very energized at the moment. For how long that'll last, I don't know. But I forgot to mention earlier, I have a hard exit at 8:30 at the absolute latest. I have an appointment. I have to get Lola out, and I have stuff. So I forgot to mention that. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. If we can get, hopefully we'll get most of the clips up. That might affect the ability to do the housing portion, but hey, no problem. We can always put it on another day if that happens. All right, kids and cubs, my mental health is doing pretty good because Beaver Lodge curling report. I was looking for my this just in prop and I couldn't find it.
There.
Today at the Beaver Lodge Curling Report, yours truly is in playoffs, and even though we lost in round 1 of my men's senior competitive team playoff, even though we hadn't lost a match at all in 2025 yet, damn, and even though we lost in the men's senior because, in our pool, we were tied at 3 teams were tied at 2-1, so we had to do a draw to the button. And that did not work out for me that day. So we got eliminated there too. But yesterday, in a 2-person stick, me and my partner, who are ranked number 7 in the A playoffs, defeated team number 2. Nice. Upset, baby. Upset. Boom, boom. And in the mixed doubles playoffs, in which I'm playing with Get Michael, who you might be familiar with if you have been around the show for a while. We are in C division there, and we won our playoff match last night as well. So there are only 2 more days to curl in the next season. In this season, Wednesday, and then the big finals on the 12th. So we're still in it. We're still in it. Fingers crossed. All right. Little tidbits before we get into the stuff. Mr. Grizzly, a big day for 2 people who fucked around and might be finding out.
Yes, Chris Barber and Tamara Leach have their verdicts read to them today. If anything, they probably won't get much more than a slap on the wrist, much like Pat King did. So that maybe, who knows, maybe more, because they were the key shit disturbers during the occupation of Ottawa. So let's see what happens. Hey,
and Litch had money go through her bank account, whereas Chris Barber
yes,
he did not.
Yes. So there's a lot that can happen. What happens, I don't know. And let the chips fall where they may. I might not like the verdict, but here's the thing: I'm going to accept it because I'm an adult.
Yes, exactly. And I don't. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Chris Barber maybe did not. The other guy, Pat King, probably did not. But Tamara Leach had a certain amount of money. I mean, I believe she had a bank account frozen, but for a whole other reason. Not just because she was at the protest. People were wondering about what was happening with that bank account, if I remember correctly. So yes, they were both charged with mischief, intimidation, and counseling others to break the law in relation to their roles in the 2022 protest that drew thousands of demonstrators to Ottawa for 3 weeks, nearly 4. The trial wrapped up in September after hearing 45 days of evidence and legal arguments. At the time, Justice Heather Perkins McVeigh said it would be daunting to come up with a verdict given the volume of evidence and legal arguments involved in the case. Remember, fellow convoy organizer Pat King was found guilty of mischief and disobeying a court order late last year and was sentenced to 3 months of house arrest with credit for time served in February. So I think it was like just under 2 years total when we got the credit for time served. But the Crown, which requested 10 years in prison for King, is appealing that sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes,
we
thought that would be the case, and it turns out that it was indeed.
Yeah, we'll find out what happens. He may still very much end up doing a little bit more of a bit than house arrest, which is what I think he's 1 year house arrest.
I believe so. Yes.
Bracelet monitored and blah 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 blah. So
yeah, I believe so.
He got off pretty light, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, I would have definitely given more, but he did spend an inordinate amount of time in prison prior to getting to trial. Part of that was his fault.
Yeah, he brought it on himself. He's like, oh, they gave me a year under house arrest for honking horns. No. There was considerably more than honking horns at play here. So yeah.
Yes, and just like Joe did not get arrested for simply having a picture of herself taken while she was given the peace sign.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's nice try gaslighting us there.
Exactly. It's what you did before the picture.
It's not going to work. We know what happened.
All right. A couple of other little tidbits. The NHL and Rogers have agreed on a 12-year, $11 billion media rights deal across Canada. So for those of you who like hockey.
Yeah, that's not a good deal for Canadians. The first time around, it wasn't a good deal for Canadians either, because you have to subscribe to Sportsnet and be a Rogers account holder. And if you're not a Rogers account holder, and I'm not, I'd have to get a Sportsnet subscription to be able to watch the games I want to watch.
Yep.
So instead, I'm stuck with mostly Leafs games on CBC on Saturday night. Now, that being said, I do know of some other ways to watch the games. I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
But they doubled the deal. The first deal was for 12 years for $5 billion. This is 12 years for $11 billion. So
TSN did the same thing when they had the Grand Slams. They used to have games that were just online that you could watch, and you just go to the TSN website. But now they've got TSN Plus, so you got to pay for that now.
Yeah, and it's not cheap.
No, it's not.
I've had TSN for the CFL season, so I can watch my Red Blacks games when they're not at home, and I don't have time to go to a pub. But it's $30 a month.
Yeah,
that's for one channel. I'm like, come on, man, give me something reasonable.
Exactly. Other news: it seems that Hungary but now is in Hungary, and Hungary has announced that it will withdraw from the top war crimes court, of course, right? And it seems that Danielle Smith is a little upset lately because it seems that according to Nanos research, again, an A-plus pollster in Canada, along with the Globe and Mail, which, everybody can have their own opinion, but is not known as a shoddy news paper. Well, apparently, Daniel Smith thinks that a survey conducted by both of them that finds that more than 2/3 of people in the prairies support putting tariffs on oil, natural gas, and electricity must be a fake poll. Quote, well, I think it's a garbage poll.
Yeah, well, guess what? It's not up to you to determine that, Danielle. It's the pollsters did by doing their job.
Yes. She goes, what if we were asked to ask Albertans or Canadians this? Would you support export tariffs if it meant the U.S. would retaliate by shutting off Line 5 and leaving Ontario and Quebec without gasoline or aviation fuel at all? I think you'd get a different answer. Yeah, that's why it's called a loaded question. That's why we leave the pollsters to form the questions. So it's a garbage poll because it has numbers she doesn't like. Of the 277 people from the prairies polled, 58.8% said they support imposing tariffs on the export of oil, natural gas, and electricity to the United States as a form of retaliation. So that did not make her happy. Now, that's resistance compared to other parts of the country. Support for tariffs nationally is at 68.1%. So it is more resistant, but it's still the majority. She's not she's not speaking for Albertans. So, and of course, Danielle Smith in her typical style, when she gets news she doesn't like or she's told no, it's a garbage poll.
Of course it is.
Because she's not like Trump at all.
Not in the least.
Stormy Danielle Trump. Yay. Okay. And finally, in a little bit of tidbits, when the Conservatives dropped their first candidate, Kits and Cubs, I thought, well, gee, that's embarrassing. And then they gave us the gift of dropping two. And I thought, okay, well, gee, any hope that news of the first drop would be unnoticed by the news because Paul Chang was such a big story, that went away because now they had to drop two in one day. And then they dropped three in one day. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, Andrew Lawton still hasn't been dropped yet. So there's going to be more, right? This is going to be a multiple day story. Well, turns out.
Survey says Conservatives drop fourth candidate in just 2 days over alleged social media activity. Alleged social media activity? Alleged?
No. Actual, because they shared a screenshot of the comment, so it's not alleged.
It's not alleged. It's right there. We're looking at it. It's not alleged. It's there.
Yes. And here's the thing. This one is particularly delicious because, we suspect that there was heavy interference by the government of India in the 2022 Conservative leadership race. Well, let's just see what the article by Stephanie Haas, CTV, says here. Late Wednesday, the party confirmed to CTV News that Don Patel, Patel is like Smith. It's a very common last name in this culture. Will no longer be running to represent the party in the riding of Etobicoke North, and shared a screenshot of a social media comment they say was shared with them that Patel supported in the past. According to the screen grab, the comment reads, "Mr. Grizzly, would you?"
One second. I had something else pop up on my screen here. My apologies. My apologies. There we go. The screen grab. Should be stopped these people by Canadian government and deported to India. Then PM Modi can take care of these nonsense people.
So I'm guessing he meant, should we stop these people? So it should be.
I guess.
But it could be a typo. But yeah. So if you remember, the big scandal about the Liberals is that Paul Chang suggested, seemingly, according to people that were there in a joking manner, that a conservative candidate, Mr. Tay, could be surrendered to the Chinese Communist government because they had placed a bounty on his head. And we said that was incredibly unacceptable. And then we saw a whole bunch of conservatives come up and really clutch pearls and said, "Oh my God, how can you ever say that?" And it turns out that all along, not only did they have Mark McKenzie that mused aloud that, we should bring back, he's all for public executions, and let's put the prime minister in that. And that was social media comment that was available, but apparently nobody caught before approving him, or did and thought it was okay and approved him anyway, which is probably more well likely what happened given this purge. Well, this guy here, Don Patel, is, should we deport certain people to India so that PM Modi can take care, I won't say that there's skippy air quotes, of these nonsense people. Nonsense is also misspelled. This is a candidate, so 2 spelling errors in fewer than 280 characters, and suggesting that we deport people to another nation. I'm guessing it's people that PM Modi doesn't like, so he can take care of them.
Certainly seems that.
So where's all the pearl clutching now, Lisa Raitt and friends? Because you had this guy who was suggesting pretty much exact the same thing. There's no bounty involved here, but returning someone to some place away so that they can be dealt with somehow. And I'm guessing that the suggestion about being dealt with does not involve pleasant things happening to the people that they're sending back.
One would assume that it's not going to be like going to the spa for the day, doing the hot and cold bath the way you want to do it. You may get the hot and cold bath, but it's not at your discretion.
And maybe coming with a certain amount of pressure.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps.
A little casual waterboarding.
It's just a mild thing, apparently.
But it's just a new form of baptism.
Apparently, yeah.
Jeez.
Christopher Hitchens, who was a writer that I admired a great deal, said waterboarding's not that bad. They said, "Why don't you try it?" So he did. And they had him on the table and they said, "Okay." And they gave him something to hold on to. They said, "If this becomes too much for you, drop this and we'll stop immediately." 3 seconds in.
Yep.
3 seconds. He dropped it. He got up off the table. "I was wrong. This is horrible. This is hellacious."
Yep. But see, it's not that bad. Oh yeah, easy to say if you've never tried it.
Give it a go. He changed his and here's why.
And he tried it in the kindest conditions possible.
Yes. And here's why I admired him, because he said, "I was wrong." Wow, he can actually, he was a bit of an elitist prick sometimes, but he was a brilliant writer, a brilliant man, and was fine to admit when he was wrong, which is the way it should be.
There's a lot of people who run their mouths.
Yeah. He put his money where his mouth was and found out the hard way that it's not what he thought it was.
So, yeah. It's a comment that we made a lot on this show, that when conservatives are complaining about something, sometimes it exists right in their own backyard, like when they were really upset that Prime Minister Trudeau was on the Aga Khan's Island, and then we found out that Rona Ambrose, the interim leader, was on her very, very rich boyfriend's very, very rich friend's yacht.
Yes. Yeah. So,
right? So again, liberals have somebody that turned around and said, "Hey, maybe we should encourage people to return someone to another country and collect a bounty where maybe something will happen to him." Actually had a guy on social media with a post up there that clearly they did not scrub or they did not look at, suggesting, "Hey, what about if we deport certain people to another country so that they can be taken care of?" I see no difference. And clearly they didn't get rid of him on the first day of the purge.
No.
And again, with the conservatives, again, you have to, I keep on saying, they're going to keep on saying, well, as soon as we found out, we removed them. Because, well, as soon as you say publicly you found out, because we don't know if you just found out. Two, if you did just found out, you didn't look very hard because you only started looking once the Paul Chang stuff. And that's, maybe we should get rid of our dead weight. Uh, and three, if you did see these things because, call me cynical, but after X number of years of watching the conservative brand in action, I believe that posts like these are a feature and a selling point for this party, and not things that they look down their nose upon. So I have no evidence of this. I just suspect, given the overall culture that emanates from this party, that they would not have been upset. I mean, they have a party leader that has mused aloud about returning Palestinian protesters if they happen not to be Canadian citizens yet, for apparently violent crimes, but it seems that the violent crime is just the mere act of protesting. And being a little too loud about it. Not always. I'm not saying that the protests haven't got, but they're including everybody.
Well, something that needs to be said about the protesters, the Palestinian protesters, they were protesting almost every day here in Centertown, downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every day. And the protest tended to be like an hour. They do their march, they chant their slogans, and then they would go home.
Yeah.
I have no issue with that whatsoever. That is a protest.
Again, so long as all the protests are within the confines of the law with regard to violence and all that kind of stuff.
But when they start saying death to Canada, which I never personally heard, I never witnessed that in person, but I have seen video clips of it in Toronto and in Montreal. I've not seen video clips of it in Ottawa, though. I'm not saying it never happened, but I've never seen a video clip of it. That is crossing the line. That's crossing the line. You're free to express that, but you're in the country that gave you shelter and you're saying death to Canada. How about we send you back there and you tell us what it's like? I know I sound like an asshole when I say it, but no, you came here. We give you have the right to protest. You have the right to freedom of expression. But sometimes your expression is going to run foul of the populace. And when you say something like death to Canada, yeah, you're not going to win any favors from any bleeding heart liberal.
Yeah. Now, you probably won't know culturally, of course, I'm not completely familiar, but I know the whole death to insert whatever after does not always necessarily mean let's kill. It's an overall sort of expression and concept.
But it doesn't translate well in this
But
country.
it does not translate well.
At all.
It does not. Now, and that is why, however, legally, when people say death to Canada, why isn't there a law? There is a law, and it probably does not apply, just like burning the flag does not apply, because
you're allowed to burn the flag.
What we think it means when we hear it, those of us who are not immersed in the culture, is not actually what it means. So,
no, you have the legal right to burn the flag as a sign of your freedom of expression in both our country and the one south of us.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's the reason why people who say death to, because if they are not Canadian citizens, don't get deported. Because it's not what it means to us; it's their intent when they say it. That
really
matters. That gets judged.
Doesn't rub the populace the correct way.
But it's yeah. Like I said. Unfortunately, even when it's stuff that we don't want to hear as bleeding heart liberals, we have no right to not be offended.
Yeah.
There's no constitutional right to go through life without being offended.
Yeah, that's right.
Which because
I'm not offended by that either. By the way,
no,
it doesn't offend me. It pisses me off.
Yeah.
There's a difference. I'm not offended. It makes me mad. I'm like, what? No, you don't get to say that. Here's why. Here's why. You don't get to say that and get away with it. You have the right to say it, but you're going to have to face repercussions.
Yeah,
you are not.
But it's along the same lines when people go like, "When's white pride?" or "When's straight pride?" And everybody knows that that's code for we hate but it's not technically. It's hateful speech, but it's not hate speech because you are not calling for the elimination of a certain group of people or for violence or harm to be done to them, but you are trying to diminish them and devalue them and dehumanize them.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, this, of course, again, just conservatives, once again, every accusation is a confession. They wrapped themselves in the morality on the Paul Chang thing, and they had this guy, and they had Mackenzie in particular. The other two, they've got stuff, don't get me wrong, but one, public executions, and this one, return people to another country so that they can be dealt with.
Mhm.
Come on, we're getting a little too close to the original thing that you found so appalling, but was within your own house. So, and this is the problem with they keep on. There's this joke they keep on saying: if in politics, if you can fake sincerity, you've got it half made.
Mhm.
They can't fake the sincerity.
No.
When Lisa Raitt was going out like this, I was just rolling my eyes, because had it been anybody else but a conservative saying those words, I would have been right with you. But I know what you've done.
Yes. You see, here's the thing. We have these things called memories and also the internet. And the internet is forever.
Everybody comes with the track record. All right. Moving on to the big subject of the day. Tariffs. Bum, bum, bum.
Vietnam got a 46% tariff, and didn't an island that just has penguins on it get a 20% tariff?
Yes. Yes. So, proof positive.
What are they
Cubs.
exporting? Penguin guano?
Proof positive, kits and cubs, that these tariffs are indeed based on very, very extremely sound calculations that a lot of people worked very hard and diligently to try to come up with.
They tariffed Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. What? They don't export anything.
This is according to Antonio Pequeño IV. Okay, interesting. According to the Trump administration, it will be imposing a 10% reciprocal tariff on the herd of McDonald Islands, an external Australian territory a little less than 1,000 miles north of Antarctica. According to an informational guide to the islands on an Australian government website, they are considered to be one of the wildest and remotest places on Earth. Other tariffs include the British Indian Ocean Territory, the Cocos or Keeling Islands, which have a population of less than 600, but they've been very, very, very nasty to us, and the Norwegian Arctic islands of Svalbard and Jan Mayen, the latter of which has no permanent population. But tariff them anyway. Heard's Island land is dominated by Big Ben, a 1.7-mile tall volcano that has erupted at least 3 times since 2000, so I'm sure it's a great destination to move to. McDonald Islands is much smaller than Heard and is surrounded by smaller islands, according to UNESCO. So yes, there are tariffs on places where actually there are no people. So just to give you a sense of what a dedicated and strong and serious intellectual and commercial exercise this was. Okay. I'll give you a couple seconds to stop giggling.
Well,
because I can't right now.
They tariffed Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, right? Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, it's south of Newfoundland. And their exports are primarily processed crustaceans, mollusks, and non-fillet frozen fish, with Canada being the main destination for these exports. Well, yes, of course, because it's right next door. The main destinations that they export to, Canada, France, and Ireland. So these...
But they've been very nasty.
These chowder heads are putting tariffs on a country that doesn't export anything to them. A territory, because it's a part of France, but they don't export anything. But we're putting 20% tariffs on. Is this the dumbest circus of assembled politicians? I use in a very air quotes light term in history. I mean,
so
talk
beautiful.
about a confederacy of dunces. Good Lord.
It's so beautiful. So
I mean, a comedy writer would go like, I quit. I quit. They're going to put the Onion and the Beaverton out of business because nobody can write shit. That's stupid.
Oh man. Okay. So this with a lot of information lifted from CBC and CNBC. The White House unveiled a baseline tariff of 10% on all countries that goes into effect on April 5. Well, not actually all countries. There were a few couple countries that were exempt. Notably, Russia's not on the list.
Wow, there's
There's over 180 countries or islands or groups or places where penguins live on the list, but Russia is not one of them. And it does seem that the love affair with Kim Jong, whatever his last name is indeed over because South Korea was on the list for 10% tariffs across the board. Oh, it used to be love, but it's over now. Even bigger duties against countries that levy higher rates on the US will be charged in coming days because, of course, they didn't have all the work done on the first day so people can know what to do and react. It's going to come over, drip, drip, drip over 2-3 days as we get more precise and more precise as people go, hey, this doesn't make sense. So apparently it wasn't the full deal. Ooh, what's this, Mr. Grizzly?
Heard and McDonald Islands will be slapped with a 10% tariff. Tariff on penguin sweatshops. Shows a bunch of penguins at sewing machines.
Oh, jeez.
Like there's nothing there but penguins, but he gave them a 10% tariff. Like, I can't write this. It's so stupid.
Calculated on the base of actual tariffs and perceived slights, or as IQ called it, quote, the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. Those penguins, man, gotta watch out for them. They're sneaky. But then IQ 47, the magnanimous, because he's such a great guy, packages it and markets it as a discounted retaliatory tariff. Crazy Donnie's tariffs, everything must go.
On sale this weekend.
We will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us, said Trump in a press conference from the White House Rose Garden. So the tariffs will not be full reciprocal.
Yeah.
Of course, the number he's using has been inflated by throwing everything in the kitchen sink into the mix and considering it a tariff, but shh, he's feeling generous, so don't harsh his mellow, man.
Don't harsh the mellow buzz. There's a beaver and a grizzly. I'm Mr. Grizzly trading a fish, a rainbow trout by the looks of it, with penguins, and you're giving them blocks of wood because Heard and McDonald Islands are just penguins.
Yeah, you know, got to share the wood. All right, the plan. Come on, man. It was sitting there. The plan imposes steep tariffs on many countries, including 34% on China, 20% on the EU, 46% on Vietnam, and 32% on Taiwan. Gee, I guess Trump is not over having lost the Vietnam War or something. I'm not sure. The tariff rate on China comes in addition to existing 20% tariffs on Chinese imports, meaning the true tariff rate on China is 54%. Okay, a very long list of countries, 8 pages worth, because he had props, but 2 nations are notably absent, Canada and Mexico. Now, I suppose that if there's any trade between Canada and Mexico and the United States that's not covered explicitly by NAFTA 2, then this base 10% would apply. Otherwise, it seems that Canada and Mexico are exempt. Now, of course, meanwhile, in the background, the 25% steel and aluminum tariffs came into effect just after midnight, affecting a great number of jobs in Canada. So, of course, I was like, you got spared the other one. Yeah, but we still have 20% on the steel tariff. And we still got your 25% kind of suspended fentanyl tariffs that could come back anytime.
Well, and his argument about fentanyl is completely ridiculous. It's just a distraction while they rob the Federal Reserve blind, because apparently what I understood was the street price of fentanyl in Canada is twice that of the street price in the US. So let me see if I get this correct. You're going to smuggle fentanyl from Canada and sell it at a loss of 50%.
Even the drug dealers don't do that much of their own drugs.
How high do you have to beat it? This is a great deal, man. I got a kilo and I'll sell it to you for the price of half a kilo. Wait a minute.
Maybe you should make me that offer when I'm already high.
Well, and you know the 40 pounds or what was it, 20 kilos that was seized at the border. You know where it was seized?
Where?
In Washington State, 140 miles south of the border.
Oh.
By two Mexican migrants who had the fentanyl in their vehicle. And they said, well, you're within the border, so it's automatically that's from Canada.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So it wasn't even seized at the border. It was 140 miles south of the border.
But it was Canadian. Close enough. We're
It was
rounding
smuggled
up.
in from Canada while these guys were actually heading north towards Canada. I can't make this shit up. I can't make it up.
Yeah. Get ready. If we're going to get ready for the first clip here, friend of the Beaver Lodge, Mr. Flavio Volpe, before everything was announced, went on CBC and gave a little useful information that we should all have. Now, of course, remember that Mr. Trump, given that he is like everything's about marketing, he did not schedule any of this until after the markets closed yesterday. So everybody was waiting all day for this to finally happen, and then it did. But prior to that, so these are comments from Flavio Volpe without him knowing exactly what was going to be coming down yet.
Well, that was weird. I don't know why it did that. I don't know. This is a weird glitch, a weird thing.
Flavio Volpe has been with us throughout. He's the president, of course, of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. He also sits on the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations, which we know today is meeting virtually at 3 p.m. So this is another big day for you. Thanks for giving us some time as it gets underway. Donald Trump calls this Liberation Day. Doug Ford, the Ontario Premier, calls it Termination Day. What does Flavio Volpe call it?
Well, Doug Ford's got great political instincts, and he just tells the truth. And it's true. We know in automotive that at 6 or 7% profit margins, if you put one tariff that's 5 or 6% or 7%, nobody's making money, they probably won't ship. What you just listed was 4 tariffs that might be 25% each. Well, you might as well go to 1,000. The industry will shut down like it did when the Ambassador Bridge was blockaded. So Doug Ford's right on that one all day long.
Shut down how quickly?
Well, we think within a week. S&P Global thinks within 5 business days. Cox Automotive said 2 weeks. Wedbush said 2 weeks. So 1 week or 2, there really is no difference. What you have is hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of the border with the anxiety that, am I going to be working next week? And they're not worried about the price of eggs. They're worried about whether I can make rent. That's going to be the biggest problem for Donald Trump. These are in states that delivered the presidency. And when Mark Carney and previous to him, Justin Trudeau said, look, there's a limit to what we can do, although we will respond strongly, but we can't do anything to them that's worse than what they're about to do to themselves. Well, we're on the brink of that one again.
So when auto tariffs were raised, that surprise announcement on the day of Signalgate to kind of deflect from that is what you suggested at the time. When that 25% came up, then there was all sorts of discussion. Would it be finished cars? Would it be parts? How much U.S. content was in the Canadian cars coming across? This was all keeping things very much up in the air. Yeah. We're going to find out about automotive tomorrow and then parts down the line. But what is the latest information you have as to what the number is for Canada? Do you know, you talked about maybe carve-outs, maybe exemptions, maybe a lower figure for Canada. What is the best info you're going on right now?
We don't know. And so this is a little bit of educated guesswork and the gossip channels in D.C. What's important is that here we are, 5-6 hours away. And the people that should know in D.C., that should actually communicate from a legislative point of view and a regulatory point of view should have said something, but would know what's happening this afternoon and say, we don't know. We may be at a 20% tariff level with these reciprocal tariffs. There might be country-specific tariffs. There might be some countries that get off because they're on a few others. It's the chaos of this administration that we're normalizing by talking about it every day, and we're getting a little bit inured to it. But when those things go through, people will lose jobs. Like regular people who don't have a voice in Washington or in Ottawa, they'll lose their jobs. It's important for people like me and Dennis and all the others that are on this Team Canada piece is to let's drill down on some answers. And where there are lack of answers, that's an opportunity to go to court and challenge the premise of using national security legislation against Canadian goods and services.
And you're planning that. You're
question.
preparing that to take to move on that to take that step when.
Well, we went to court to reopen the Ambassador Bridge, and what has to happen is you have to be able to, if you're going for an emergency stay on that legislative order, you have to turn around and show irreparable harm. You have to argue in front of a judge to say, if you don't do this right now, we will never recover that. And then you got to argue why that's a problem. So it took us 2 days. The industry shut down with the Ambassador Bridge, and then we went to court. What we're going to have to see is in the U.S., when the industry shuts down, we'll take some of our members and we'll go to court. Might be a week, might be 2, but we're ready.
But it's imminent.
Yeah,
and
no
you're
question.
ready to go. Let's talk about, I want to come, Flavio's come in with something that I want to come to at the end because it sort of speaks to the moment. But I want to talk about the council today.
Yep.
As I said, you sit on the Prime Minister's Council for Canada-U.S. Relations, 3 p.m. the meeting.
Yep.
Take us to the degree you're able to into that meeting, the virtual meeting room today. What are you going to finalize? What are you going to discuss?
Well, usually that meeting is about everybody who's agreed to volunteer their time to this brings the insight that they have. And that's, you know, it's a membership that's coast to coast across the political spectrum, but also I think a really good cross-section of the Canadian economy. Bring their networks, bring their insights, especially in a time like this where Washington doesn't know what it's doing 4 hours before. There are some people who have better relationships than others, and some who have a global view, talking to the Europeans and the Japanese and the Koreans. And certainly we're going to share all of that with the Prime Minister and government officials, and then talk about a path forward. We usually talk through scenarios, saying, look, if this happens, what would be your advice? And then it's, you know, just a reminder to your viewers, you know, the Canadian government has a cabinet, it has officials. We're advisors to that process. And so they make those decisions.
I'm wondering what the degree of unanimity is around that table,
Yeah.
and also if you could just indicate, if we're waiting to find out what Canada's response is, we know there's the $125 billion additional retaliatory measures in the pocket, if you will. What is your position on what Canada's response should be later today?
So there is unanimity at that table. I think everybody's got the priority one is let's defend Canadian interests, all of them. And a lot of them, senior people who have a public platform, have been cautioning the government last week to say, look, you don't have to respond. We don't have to scratch that itch just because he threatened something. Let's watch all these things unfold over the next week. And then when we can do our math, we can pick our spots. And Canada's been ready for months with, you know, those various packages. The question is, we don't know whether we're in this reciprocal tariff, which, by the way, we made up. Nobody understands what this is. Are they going to put a tariff because we have an HST, which is what they threatened? Are they going to be layered like they've threatened? Will there be no duty drawbacks like they've threatened? You know, it's one thing to say, okay, I know what I want to do on a 25% tariff based on a fentanyl issue that may expire. But what am I going to do if it's 100% and it's permanent and they don't have the regs written? So we're expressing caution.
So it's there, so
Yeah.
it's, again, still a matter. You're meeting
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
The Trump announcement is at 4. The Prime Minister is meeting with his cabinet at 5:30.
Yeah.
And then when we have sort of the fuller scope. But do we need to wait until autos tomorrow to really know how Canada should respond?
No, and I think auto is a unique case because
Okay.
there's nothing we can do in automotive that's going to be worse than what they're going to do to themselves.
Okay. So today, one would expect, once we get the lay of the land, we'll see something. Just very quickly, because I have to let you go, what did you bring in and what does it speak to for this moment?
Secretary Lutnick says, bring those jobs back. These are Michigan jobs. And I keep saying, you know, we've been making cars in this country for 120 years. Well, we used to make Ford Model Ts at Christine DuPont in Toronto as well as in Windsor. And this is a Ford manual from 1916 for Canadian-made Model Ts. If you bought that Model T and the streets were all muddy, you had to drive it on the roof of that 5-story building. They handed you one of these and they said, good luck. They were made by Canadian workers with Canadian raw materials and Canadian parts. This document is 109 years old. It's not, you can't dispute it on Twitter. This says you're wrong, and that's why we're fighting.
Come back. We'll talk next time. Thank you, Flavio.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate it. This is
Flavio's awesome. Love that guy. We got to get him back on again.
Yep.
I understand he's probably very busy these days, though.
Yes, he's a little busy these days, but apparently he's going to every opportunity he can get his hands on. So, so interesting we're at the point now where we're dealing with people where we have to bring documents
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
1906 and saying, look, buddy, stop trying to invent reality.
This happened. This was a
If we're
thing.
going to,
It was
yes,
real.
if we're going to have this conversation, you need to acknowledge that we've been in this business like for 120 years.
We brought receipts. We got
These
receipts.
are not Michigan jobs.
No.
These have always been Canadian jobs. All right. Calme-toi le pompon un petit peu, as we say in French. You might want to sit down and not be as agitated for a little while. But Mr. Volpe bringing some interesting information too to how it actually works in these council meetings and how the process gets together and how everybody brings their best and they come up with a strategy and puts their input, which is how it should be. And obviously these are people that care because these are meetings that are called like snap right away. So wherever you are, you drop everything, you virtually patch in, and
Well, I think the Canadian Auto Parts Manufacturing Association is very happy they elected him president because
yes,
man's doing a stellar job.
He's
a stellar job. And I mean, remember, they built the Arrow, and that was the first 100% Canadian all-electric car.
Mm-hmm.
They've got one model that they brought as a prototype. It cost a lot of money to put it together. Now they have 5 different models that they're going to be showing around, and they're trying to create a Canadian electric vehicle manufacturing. It's doable. He proved that it's doable.
Well, one day ago, the Canadian Project Arrow car was showcased at a global trade fair in Germany.
There you go. Right? Yeah. Project Arrow is very much the future of what we could be doing in this country. We used to build things like this, and it's Project Arrow named after the Avro arrow. And we talked about that when he was a guest on the show, because he and I are both big fans of Avro and what it did. And of course, I grew up with it. My dad, military, my dad worked on jet engines, right? So it was a big thing in my life.
Yeah. In Saga, Ontario local news by Glenn Hendry here. It's written, with protests happening at Tesla dealerships around the world and U.S. President Donald Trump unleashing tariffs that could devastate the Canadian auto sector, now seems the perfect time for Project Arrow 2.0 to make its debut at Hannover Messe, the world's biggest technology fair. Project Arrow, Canada's first locally made zero-emission vehicle, was designed by a student team at Carleton University in Ottawa and built with 97% Canadian components in Oshawa at Ontario Tech University's Automotive Centre of Excellence.
So 97%. I thought it was 100, but
round up. First unveiled in 2023 at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the car has since moved from concept to the brink of almost mass production. Wow. What timing! The latest version was presented in Hanover, where Canada is the partner country at the fair. Durham's region's booth, with a handful of local dignitaries making the trip, is front and center. The zero-emission concept vehicle was developed by the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association of Canada, AMPA President Flavio Volpe, a very vocal Canada booster amid the 51st state rhetoric during Trump's tumultuous first 2 months as president, said the car showcases Canadian innovation, perseverance, and collaboration in the face of adversity. Quote, Project Arrow is about the entire Canadian movement into electric mobility and creating a vision for a sustainable and innovative tomorrow. Canada has the power to change the automotive world. With Germans among the strongest voices opposing Trump and Tesla owner Elon Musk, the timing for Project Arrow 2.0 was impeccable, and Volpe made sure German Chancellor Olaf Scholz had the first-hand look when he stopped by the Durham region booth. Volpe said Scholz's first question was when the car was going to go into mass production. We are building a fleet, was the response. There is no timeline yet on whether that fleet will go into production, but when that fleet will go into production, but Ontario Tech in Oshawa will continue to play a key role. Designated as the lead academic institution in the vehicle's initial development from 2021 to 2024, Ontario Tech will help drive innovation in the next phase as the official research and build partner for the APMA. And that is why, Doug Ford, you need to properly fund post-secondary education. And by the way, we're seeing all these stories about American researchers like Timothy Snyder, the guy who wrote the book on tyranny, for example, coming back to Canada. Maybe one good thing to put in our plan is to actually boost the amount of money that we actually put into research and development and make some serious contributions. Because if we're going to get Timothy Snyder's and people in the medical world and whatnot like this, let's fund them, not just welcome them. Let's not make the same mistake we made with immigration and not have houses. So if we're going to bring them here for research purposes and get the brain gain, let's make sure that we actually have funding for them to do the damn research.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. Haven't heard anybody speak about that yet, but that should be part of our plan to get stronger.
Yeah, no kidding. It absolutely should be.
Yeah. So there's more here in this article, but and I'll post it there in the chat for the kids who want it. But yeah, this is a very, very good news that this is happening at the same. It's amazing how sometimes just things happen concurrently. This was not planned for them to be there as there were tariffs coming, and we certainly didn't plan it for the time where these particular tariffs would come in place. But well, gee, look what happened. Oh well. So here's the thing. These tariffs have come, right? Come and gone. We don't seem to be particularly affected by the new ones. The steel ones are still on. The 25% fentanyl ones seem to be temporarily suspended, but can come back anytime, hanging over our head. And he's talking about tariffs in specific sectors, specialized sectors that might be to come. So lumber, semiconductor, stuff like that, which can all affect us, right? And then, as Flavio Volpe said, and as Heather Hiscox said in the interview, right? Right now it's on automotive, the overall car, but now they're going to get into parts and whatnot. So there's going to be more rules coming down. So more opportunities to say, well, we said that, but we've changed our minds.
Well, when you consider semiconductors, there's an issue right now happening in the South China Seas. Taiwan, which is the biggest manufacturer of said product, is surrounded right now by the Chinese Navy. Yep. They're having exercises.
Yes. They have a lot of those exercises.
And since we know Trump is not going to do a damn thing about it, we could be headed for a shortage of electronic parts for manufacturing of everything. Well,
including cars?
Find something with a semiconductor that anything electronic has it today, right?
Some people's fridges have semiconductors now.
Well, you do remember during the height of the pandemic, Ford could not sell their vehicles because they were waiting. There was a shortage of chips.
Yeah,
they couldn't. They wouldn't operate, right? Like the vehicle wouldn't run. They needed the chips. So
yeah, my Beaver Sweetie's brother was waiting on his new car, and it was delivered, I think, like a year and 3 months later than expected.
Yeah, lots of people went through that.
Yep,
just parts shortages, and we're
So
let me grab a coffee. I'll be right back, sir.
Okay. So the thing here that we absolutely cannot do and should not be doing, even though we might want to, is engage in a bit of triumphant celebration here. We got him. Trump blinked. But that's probably not a good idea because things can change any minute again. And there's still so more shoes that can drop. And well, remember, this is the Trump era. So Trump always wins. And we just say thank you. That's how it works now. Fortunately, Canadians are pretty good at keeping low key. I mean, look at our patriotism, right? Everybody's surprised at the explosion, for lack of a better word, of national patriotism after all of this started, because it's not typical of Canadians. We tend to be a little more quiet and demure and thoughtful about it. But when it unleashes, it's there. It's always there, right? So I think that as a nation, we're built for these tariffs. We were excluded. Oh, well, that's nice. And just moving on without going, and like quietly as we're walking away, go, yeah, but not outwardly, because you can't give him anything that will cause him to react, right? If we go out and say, we won, you know that 2 days later we're going to get a new tariff for a new reason. Just the way he is.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody else wins. Only Donald wins.
Yeah, only Donald wins. Yeah.
Only Donald wins. Okay. So yesterday we had a very, very brief take. And in this case, from Prime Minister Mark Carney, not Liberal leader, because in this case he was acting as Prime Minister. We haven't heard much from him yesterday, mostly because, again, the tariffs came later in the day. And then when the news came, he had to have a meeting with his Cabinet Committee for Canada-U.S. Relations, having a virtual meeting with the group of the advisory board, of which Flavio Volpe is a member. He probably also had to have a virtual meeting with the first ministers, and hopefully he got to reach out to some Indigenous leaders and business leaders, business sector leaders at the same time. And we'll probably hear from him later today with something a little more comprehensive. But this here was his hot take.
Je vais prononcer quelques mots.
I'll say a few words.
So, President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system. Now, in doing so, he has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States. But the fentanyl tariffs still remain in place, as do the tariffs for steel and aluminum. As of this evening, the tariffs on automobiles will enter into force, and the U.S. has signaled that there will be additional tariffs in so-called strategic sectors, pharmaceuticals, lumber, and semiconductors. So we're in a situation where there is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. But the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians. We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7. In a crisis, it's important to come together, and it's essential to act with purpose and with force, and that's what we will do. Alors, en français, si je peux.
Mr. Guzzi, if you'll just go to the 4-minute mark.
Le président Trump, il vient
President Trump has in territories, and after all of that, there will be a response.
Meeting of my Canada-U.S. Council. I will shortly have a meeting. We will have a meeting of the Cabinet Committee, Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. Tomorrow morning, we will convene First Ministers of the provinces and territories, and we will have more to say after we have taken those soundings, and we'll be back to you shortly.
Oh, that was
okay.
loud.
Yeah, the scrubs are loud. So you will notice someone got a haircut. By the way, looking sharp, Mr. Carney. So he just came out of the meeting with the advisory panel from the overall community, of which Flavio Volpe was a part. He was going into his cabinet meeting, and then later on he was at. So this is after the first of the 3 meetings, and after Donald Trump had just announced them. So this is really, really the hot take immediately after. Now, there's another thing that happened yesterday as well. Trump also signed an executive order shutting down the de minimis trade loophole effective May 2nd. Now, we've talked about this on the show a bit. It doesn't really affect us so much. This is more about China, but it's still a big deal. In February, because we mentioned it, he had abruptly ended the de minimis trade exemption, which allows shipments of worth less than $800 to enter the U.S. duty-free. And within days, Trump had reversed course on that and delayed the cancellation of the provision. Well, it seems that he's put it back in place with new terms. Goods that used to qualify under the de minimis exemption will now be subject to a duty of either 30% or $25 per item, and the rate will increase to $50 per item on June 1st, said the White House. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection has said it has processed more than 1.3 billion de minimis shipments in 2024, up from over 1 billion shipments in 2023. Shares of PDD Holdings, the parent company of Chinese online marketplace Temu, and other groups like that, which are going to be most affected by this, dropped by 2.55% upon the news. Now, stock markets were also affected by the news. The futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 1,069 points, or 2.5%, upon the news being made public. The S&P futures dropped 3.6%, and the NASDAQ 100 futures lost 4.5%. The NASDAQ is the tech-heavy portion stock index. So Tesla and stuff like that are probably on that. So they took the biggest hits. Shares of multinational companies tumbled in extended trading. Nike and Apple each dropped 7%. Shares of big sellers of imported goods were among the hardest hit. Five Below lost 14%. Dollar Tree tumbled 11%, and Gap plunged 8.5%. Tech shares dropped in an overall risk-off mood, with Nvidia off 5% and Tesla down a further 7%. They were already down 14% for the year. That's just for the year. That's not since inauguration. They were down much more since that. Traders had hoped a 10 to 20% rate would be a universally applied cap, not a minimum starting point, which is why all those future markets took a tumble. What was delivered was a haphazard as anything this administration has done to date, and the level of complication on top of the ultimate level of new tariffs is worse than had been feared and not yet priced into the market, said Art Hogan, chief market strategist at B. Riley Wealth Management. The S&P 500 had risen for a third day on Wednesday on hopes that Trump would not announce a severe tariff plan, on the risk it would tip the economy into a slowdown and raise already sticky inflation. The benchmark has been hit since late Friday, with it falling into correction territory, or 10% down from its record. Because of the heightened uncertainty caused by Trump's ongoing tariff announcements, this uncertainty has started to show up in some sluggish economic data, which further pressured stocks by heightening recession fears. Quote, "If he would have come up with just the 10%, I think the markets would probably be up quite a bit right now," said Larry Tentarelli, chief technical strategist at Blue Chip Trend Report. Quote, "But because the tariffs came in bigger than many expected, I think what that does is it creates more downside volatility right now." Extrapolating the losses in after-hours Wednesday trading, the S&P 500 is on course to fall back into correction during regular hours trading on Thursday. Now, Mr. Grizzly, do you have any thoughts on this, first of all?
Well, I think we're about to see massive layoffs. We're going to see the economy take a bigger hit than it did when COVID first came in. Countries around the world are going to suffer horribly. I mean, he's already done irreparable harm to farmers throughout the United States by killing USAID. And that will probably end up killing millions of people around the world because they no longer have any sort of food. The man is a complete blithering idiot who thinks he knows all. He thinks he's smarter than everybody. He thinks he knows everything and refuses to listen to anybody who tells him anything because he knows best. Well, we're all going to find out, for those of you who aren't aware, how stupid he really is. And we're all going to pay a very heavy financial price for it. There will be people who will suffer from this who will never recover. In many ways, this is way worse than the 2008 crash and in the 2020 global shutdown. Because the shutdown was, we knew, okay, this is going to hurt and a lot of people are going to lose a lot, but it's not permanent. It's going to be a short-term thing, but it's going to hurt. But we got to do it to protect people. Like the money I lost during that time period, I will never recover.
Right.
Fine. I don't care. I didn't occupy a city and scream about it because I'm an adult. Sorry. But what's going to take place with this is people are going to lose their livelihood, their homes, their farms, their jobs. And it's going to affect everyone because as each company starts to lose another percentage or 3 or 5 of their profit margin, they'll look for places to cut, and they will cut to the bone to maintain the profit margin for their shareholders, because Milton Friedman said the shareholder is the most important thing. Well, the entire economy is based around that, thanks to Ronald Reagan implementing Milton Friedman's ideologies. We are suffering because of things that took place 50 years ago. It all started to tumble with Reagan.
Yep.
I mean, he did it to California, then he did it to the whole country. This trickle-down economics, it's never, ever worked. So who's going to get rich on this? A couple of rich people will get a little bit richer. A couple of rich people, but big companies are going to start to hurt. Like Apple's already hurt, and Tesla's basically finished.
Hmm.
And I have the audio of Elon crying in the Oval Office. Is it
Sorry.
Schadenfreude? I mean, I really, bro, you brought it on yourself.
Muskenfreude.
Yeah. Well, it's going to... How the world responds to this, I don't know. But it is going to harm millions of people. And job loss is going to be massive. With whatever his automotive tariffs that are implemented today, whatever they are, and I don't know how they're going to do it because literally they're, like somebody said earlier in the chat, the Wall Street Journal did a thing where for a Ford F-150, there are thousands of parts that go back and forth across all two borders.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
So,
now, Mr. if you do have Elon crying, it might be a good palate cleanser before you move into Sasaray.
apparently it was Anonymous that hacked this.
Oh.
Apparently. That's what I'm told. They hacked it, and this is it's 19 seconds, and just have a listen. And pay attention to the response from Trump. Typical. Doesn't give a shit.
It's okay. It's not okay because Tesla is going down, and it's not good. Smart guy, you can do this. It's bad. It's really bad. Everything's going to be okay. It's all going to come out in the wash, as they say. Soon everybody will be buying again.
Well, if this is real, if it's real, because it could be AI.
Well, apparently, shortly thereafter, he had his fire sale on the lawn, at the White House lawn.
Oh, okay.
And check this. This is an image from Getty. So if you check this out, I'll make it a little bit bigger if I can. Hang on, I'll blow it up some. I should be able to blow it up a bit. No, it's not letting me do it. Oh well. Basically, what this says, if you can see it there, is Tesla pricing, full self-driving, Model X, CT, Model S, Model Y. It's selling points.
Yes.
This is what he's holding in his hand, the selling points.
Yes. He was, yes. Oh, man. All right. So
wait, I was able to blow it up a little bit better here, so it'll be easier to see. I'll try it again just a sec here. Yeah, I was able to blow it up. So here is a better image of what it looks like. You can see that there. Tesla pricing, full driving mode, Model X, CT, Model S. Teslas can be purchased for as low as $299 a month or $35,000. All cars self-driving just needs to be turned on. There's a fee attached to that.
Wow.
Wow.
Trump auditioning for his next role on The Price is Right as a Barker's Beauty. All the women instantly resign from the show. No, thank you. We've heard what he does in dressing rooms.
All right, tell me, what's it going to take to get into this here Tesla?
Jeez. So Jean Charest popped up yesterday. Now, that name might be familiar to you because we talked about Team Carney having had reached out to Jean Charest, who said, I'm not probably interested in a cabinet position or anything like that. But, if ever you need me when things, come up, I might be able to help. Well, it seems that things have come up rather quickly.
Okay, Jean Charest is standing by. He is a former Premier of Quebec, of course, a former Deputy Prime Minister, and a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. Jean Charest, I don't know if you're as confused as the rest of us, but I wonder what your sense is. Is this a day for relief on avoiding these global reciprocal tariffs, or still in the middle of deep trade anxiety because of what's happening with auto, steel, and aluminum? How would you describe today?
Well, David, what I see is that we're all suffering from the Stockholm syndrome. You'll remember the concept. We've been taken hostage by Donald Trump for the last few months, who on a day-to-day basis throws stuff at us and sees whether it sticks to the wall or not, and we react. And now we hear 10%, we conclude it's good news. Actually, when a government announces these things, actually, David, they have a responsibility to be clear. They obviously aren't. And I think they're going to pay a price for that confusion when the market's open tomorrow, because it's going to be difficult for people to work their way through this. What it comes out of this, though, it should be very clear for Canada. The auto sector is hit very hard. And that is going to have a deep impact. It means that we're going to have to look at how we respond to that. As we respond, by the way, we need to be strategic and we need to be intelligent about it. The situation's evolved a lot since we put together an initial package of $125 billion, you remember, on which we consulted, and now we return. So the Prime Minister and his government are going to have a close look at where we need to respond and where we go, and be as pointy as we can. One thing I like about this announcement today is that he's packaging this in legislation that will go to Congress, as opposed to executive orders for which we just have to deal with. That gives us a lot of touch points to be able to respond to what is in this package with congressmen and senators, and that is for Canada a much different playbook than the one we've had to deal with from the beginning of this administration.
No, that is a very good point, because certainly there are a lot of like-minded people in the House of Representatives and in the Senate to Canada and how these trade disputes should be settled, and it does, it makes the midterm elections coming up a whole lot more important in terms of stabilizing these things. But I know there was a meeting of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. relations in the run-up to this before.
Yes.
I'm assuming you didn't know at that time. I don't know if you were given the heads up or if you found out from the chart like the rest of the world. But what's your advice to Mark Carney, knowing what we know now, in terms of how Canada should respond to this? Is this the time to de-escalate on this side of the border, or is it to hold firm, keeping things in place until everything is gone?
Well, as we look at the longer midterm picture, we need to keep everything on the table in terms of options. A. B, be very strategic in what we do, be targeted, as I mentioned, especially if we have legislation in Congress. Then we have a lot of touch points to work with. And our embassy is going to be very busy with all of that. I think we need to take time and take whatever time is necessary to analyze all of this carefully. And once the smoke has cleared and we understand what we're exactly dealing with. And finally, I'd add this, David. The Prime Minister and the President in their conversation seem to agree on a longer-term agreement. That's good news for us. It may not be, or with today's announcement about the present agreement, CUSMA, maybe the Americans want to continue with CUSMA. If that's the case, there has to be a longer-term negotiation that will allow us to have at least some predictability in regards to our trade relationship with the United States.
There's about $60 billion in round numbers in counter tariffs in place, if my math is correct, Mr. Charest. The $30 billion for the initial fentanyl tariffs, let's call them, and then another $30 billion for the steel and aluminum. I don't know if we've done anything just yet on auto. I think the plan was to wait and see. Do you think those will stay in place? I mean, ultimately it's up to Mr. Carney and his cabinet. But it seems like those, the triggering decisions for those have not gone away. So do you think it stays status quo there?
Well, we can look at what it is that we put out there and see whether in this new configuration, it's a whole new configuration, what works and what is the most effective, always keeping in mind. I mean, we all agree that whatever we do, we want to, as much as we can, protect Canadian consumers and Canadian jobs. And so, of course, we should look at it with that view, but also, David, we need to be very clear. This is a world of very bad choices. We only have bad choices when we reply. The logic of tariffs and counter tariffs is bad for everyone. So that's the world in which we are making choices, and we all wish it were different. But we have to defend our fundamental sovereign interest as we go ahead with this.
No, look, the tariff versus tariff, it's a circular firing squad for the citizens and the companies of the various countries. So just as a final point, Mr. Charest, Mark Carney said last week that, that underlying relationship of economic integration, defense and security cooperation, it's over. I mean, how do you see it based on this reprieve today? Are we still in that world that it's like, even if it gets better from this point on, you just got to look elsewhere for the long term?
A moment ago on your show, someone mentioned that Trump would leave office at one point. The truth of the matter is, Trumpism is with us for the foreseeable future, whether it's Donald Trump or anyone else. Our world and our relationship with the United States has changed forever. Donald Trump, we may thank him in 30 years from now because he will have forced Canada to look at how we operate our economy, how we operate our federal system, and the place that we occupy in the world. But we will never return to the relationship we had before.
Jean Charest, we appreciate you joining us on a busy and kinetic day. Let's call it that. We appreciate
I think he's
Kinetic,
accurate in
there's a
that
word.
we may thank him in 30 years from now because we are being forced, our hand is being forced to change things up. I have to run, sir, because
Yes.
it is reaching that hour. By all means, carry on if you want. I don't know if you want or not, but before I go.
Close off, yeah. But go ahead. I'll close off, but go ahead, yes.
Okay, before I go, polling Canada from Angus Reid, March 31st, 2025. Which leader is most likely to divide Canadians? Poilièvre, 56%, Carney, 29%, unsure, 15%. Again, it's Angus Reid, which is right-winger conservative biased. So that's...
It would appear.
By his... Yeah.
Yes.
By all measure, it appears that they are conservative biased. And it's interesting that is the poll that they came up with. All right, I do have to run, sir.
Absolutely.
I will see you all later. Take care.
Thanks, my friend. Thank you. I'm glad Mr. Grizzly mentioned some polls there. So before we transition that way, again, there is Jean Charest with some interesting comments also on the advisory board from the get-go. Prime Minister Trudeau had asked him to join it, and he did. So offering his best advice and counsel with regard to what is going on in that capacity as someone who hears what all the other players on that council have to say and has been privy to the discussions. So I was, if I had Mr. Grizzly with us for the rest of the show, I would have gone on to talk about today Pierre Poilièvre, who yesterday decided to once again preempt the Prime Minister. And I am saying the Prime Minister specifically in this case because yesterday Mark Carney was acting as Prime Minister, not just as Liberal leader, with having an event of his own in Toronto where he was presenting his response to the tariffs. And the thing that I found really interesting about that is that he was presenting his response to the tariffs before the tariffs were announced. Yeah. Nothing screams I'm thirsty for attention like saying you're going to respond to something that has not yet been announced. So we will go into it hopefully tomorrow, and I'll be able to show you some clips. But Pierre engaged in a very, very interesting exercise yesterday, like he did when the campaign started, in that he tried to set the tone, to be the first person to speak on something, which gives him the impression, of course, with all the camera angles and everything, to look prime ministerial. So yesterday, because he knew that the actual prime minister wouldn't get the news on the tariffs dropping until the markets closed, and then would have to have three very big, important meetings with three important groups, that essentially the cat is away. So the PeePee mouse got to play. And yesterday he cosplayed Prime Minister. He stood on front of a stage in Toronto with a big crowd, giving him big applause for all his lines, telling people what his plan was and what we had to do and all this good stuff and why he does this. And when we show it tomorrow, you will see that there was way much more going on here. Some of it's kind of creepy if you're paying attention. But one of the things that comments that we have been having about Pierre Poilièvre is that he seems to be more chameleon than person, and seems to take on identities and personas and affects that are not naturally known to be his in order to sell messages. We point often to the lots of photoshopped type images with him having bigger biceps than he has and wearing tight t-shirts and potentially girdle and a couple of makeovers to make him look young and fit and vibrant when he was taking on Trudeau. But now that he's taking on Carney, well, now he's got some strategic gray in his hair. And as he accuses Carney of lifting his policies, which, in fairness, Carney has taken up a couple of policies first suggested by Pierre, like, for example, no GST on housing, which Pierre came up with first. And then Carney said, okay, well, if we need that to be on the table, we'll do that. Or a middle-class tax cut. Okay, well, if we need to be in the game, we'll do that. But Pierre keeps on saying that Carney's lifting everything from him. And as we've shown in previous shows, when Pierre Poilièvre came out first and said, I've got a plan to deal with these tariffs, all the elements of the plan were things that had been mentioned over the past 2.5 weeks previous by other people, and that he had just taken them together, put them all together and said, hey, I have a 7-point plan. Not particularly original. Now, I'm not saying that there's 75,000 different strategies to get there, and probably if you're all developing plans, there are going to be certain points in common. But given that he was the very last to speak, it just looked like, if he was doing any research into that, he just basically decided to sit back and wait for everybody to announce stuff and go, I like this, I like this, I like this, cobble it all together and go, here's my plan. It didn't seem to be particularly deep. There didn't seem to be anything new or innovative that came from his mind in his plan. We'll also note that Mark Carney, from the get-go, has been saying, I believe that plan is better than no plan. And, now Poilièvre is going, we need a plan. How about my plan? But it's not your plan. That's the whole point. But bless his soul. But bless his heart. He's trying to present himself to Canadians as a man with a plan who's reasonable and dependable. And this is nothing we know of him, really. We know of him. He has plans, lots of plans. None of them are particularly helpful, unfortunately. But in this moment, everything that we know about Pierre, the moving fast and waving his arms and his hands and pointing at stuff and talking like this, and we're going to get it, all of that is gone in that presentation. He's an entirely different person. So it's a little weird because we know who he is, and now we're seeing who he's trying to portray himself as being. And let's just say, short version is, it seems that the strategy of the Conservatives is, if your strategy is not working, just lift someone else's. So when I watched this thing happen yesterday, and then I'll be able to show you tomorrow, my first and only thought is this Pierre Poilièvre or is this Mark Carney? Because Pierre Poilièvre essentially did his best Mark Carney imitation, right down to speech patterns. It's extremely disturbing to watch. So we'll have that for you tomorrow. Also, we wanted to talk to you about Mark Carney himself, who a couple of days ago came out with a comprehensive plan to deal with housing, so much so that I've listened to some interviews with other experts like Mike Moffat, who was an expert that the Liberals had brought in when they had one of their retreats out east, I believe, to around the time that they were going to make Sean Fraser the Minister of Housing, to get some advice on what they needed, and hence the Housing Accelerator Fund came along. Mike Moffat has said that the Carney plan for housing is almost over ambitious, actually, because Mark Carney has stated in his housing plan that we build 250,000 houses a year about here in Canada, and he wants to double that to about 500,000, so that we can, make sure that we fill the supply gap as fast as possible. Mike Moffat is saying we probably only really need to do 350,000. So this is really quite an ambitious plan. The big question with this type of plan, of course, is do we have the workers, the actual manpower, human capital, for lack of a better term, to actually build all these houses? Now, a lot of it is going to be prefab and modular homes. There's a big strategy for that in particular, which might make it easier in order to get all those homes up, of course. But it is a extremely ambitious strategy. And when we look at that which the NDP put on the table and Pierre Poilièvre has put on the table, this is vastly different. One of the big differences between conservative policy on housing and liberal policy on housing is with the GST reduction specifically, because Pierre Poilièvre was first out of the gate with that, mentioning that before campaign that he's planning to do something. And I believe it was $1 million on houses. No GST on houses of $1 million or less. And then Mark Carney came up with similar thing, and then Pierre Poilièvre modified his strategy to make it up to $1.3 million. But also different from Carney is for Carney, it's on your first home purchase, and I think Pierre, it'll be even if it's not your first home purchase, if you are purchasing a new home, then it will be there. Apparently, there's no GST on the sales of home that are not new. From what I've heard, I have not been able to independently verify this myself, but heard on some podcasts with people that are fairly reputable guests whose opinions I would trust, that there is no GST on the sale of homes if they're not new homes. So, for example, I live in a strawberry box. If I were to sell it at one point, no GST. If it was a brand new construction, somebody was buying it, would be. So for Pierre, if it's not just your first home, if it's your second or your third home, but you're buying a new one, he would include it for that as well. So that's a difference. So Pierre is going to spend much more money on this policy than Carney is in this case. Since I can't show you the clip, but there's probably going to be a lot to talk about tomorrow if we're going to be trying to look at housing and looking at Pierre, and also looking at what the full response will be from Mark Carney on the tariffs, because that will probably come out today at some point. I wanted to read to you something written by Evan Scrimshaw because with him particularly, he's been very focused on the housing issue. He was a big fan of Nate Erskine-Smith, for example, being the leader of the Ontario Liberals, because he had a very, very good housing policy. And Evan Scrimshaw was very happy when Nate Erskine-Smith decided that he was going to remain in politics rather than quitting, and was giving the housing minister portfolio. Given he's been following this, he's one of the people out there who's been following this issue rather closely. I figured I would read to you what it is he had to say about the housing plan. The title of his piece, and it's written on March 31st if you're subscribed to his Substack, or if you want to go look at his Substack. It's called Liberal Housing Announcement, a Home Run on the Brilliant Housing Announcement. I owe Nate Erskine-Smith an apology. In December, I took the news of Nate's decision to take the housing portfolio I'm going to curb the F-bombs, freaking badly, thinking not necessarily unreasonably given the polling that Nate was signing up for a stint on the Titanic, and that it would be a worthless job and an anchor to his political career. And now the Liberal Party of Canada is proposing a public builder over $25 billion in financing for prefabricated home builders, $10 billion in low-interest financing for affordable home builders. They're also working with municipalities to slash development charges in half for multi-unit building, working to cut needless red tape and zoning restrictions, making it easier to convert single-family homes into affordable housing, and harmonize regulations that increase costs and create barriers for developers to work in multiple provinces and territories. It is an innovative plan that meets the scale of the crisis we face and is proof of the seriousness Carney's Liberals bring to the issue of housing. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Moffat made the comment that we're not going to solve this problem by tinkering just with tax policy. No, actually, sorry, that was Mark Carney that mentioned that in his comments, not Mike Moffat, that we had to do more. And Mike Moffat had commented about how comprehensive this plan was, working on many aspects at the same time. Very, very, a lot of thought has gone into this, other than, hey, let's just call it 15% tax cut and sell it. There seems to be more thought about how this actually works in real life and how all the pieces work together. The public builder is the newsiest bit, but I have to say I have been banging the effing drum on cutting development charges and filling the gaps with federal dollars for months now. To see Carney do it is remarkable. It's a concrete step to get the cost of housing down, and it serves to help both home builders and home buyers make the math pencil out easier, especially at a time when Canadian lumber, steel, and aluminum are at high-risk tariff, spurring domestic demand for those products through more Let's try that again. Especially at a time when Canadian lumber, steel, and aluminum are at a tariff risk, spurring domestic demand for those products through more home building seems like a damn good idea. The other part beyond the public builder that strikes me is the prefabricated builders financing. There's a lot of money being thrown at innovation solutions in the prefab space. And this Policy Options article, so he links to an article from Policy Options, examines a lot of the benefits of prefab building. This is a big commitment to prefab as a source moving forward that can cut costs, speed up timelines, and make it easier to achieve outcomes. The introduction of federal financing, both for prefab and traditional affordable builders, also gives certainty in an economic environment where there is little certainty elsewhere. So that's some very encouraging news over here. This is a big It's also worth noting that prefab's lower costs could work well for transitional and supportive housing of the kind that we've completely abandoned in recent decades. If the government wants to end encampments and the kind of tent cities that have become commonplace in a way that's better than just bulldozing them, then building more places for the homeless to go is a pretty key part of that. I assume this is not lost on the team at Housing. The public builder is the most interesting idea, however, because it achieves both a policy objective and a political one. There's been a lot of talk about how the left is going for the Goldman Sachs banker who is moving to the right, but that's always been a dumb and facile understanding of what's actually happening here. Mark Carney and the Liberals understand what happened to the housing market cannot merely be fixed through necessary market reforms, but by a return to public building. It is a very crucial sign that a re-elected Carney government will not be bound by rigid ideology and will listen to the best arguments. I wrote before the cabinet shuffle that the Liberal left doesn't need to be in control. We just need to be assured of having a seat at the table. The public builder kills any argument we don't. This is a hugely significant step towards firmly putting the NDP in the single digits and keeping them there, because a solely market-oriented reform package would have seen the government attacked for being too centrist and insufficiently progressive. Now, that line is there. That the Liberals are proposing both market and non-market solutions is hugely significant. If the housing crisis is as severe and as serious as we all agree it is, then we need every tool in the toolkit to do so. We need pro-market reforms like cuts to development charges, tax incentives, and cuts to red tape and needless duplicative regulation to spur housing, but we also need a more active federal government in building affordable and non-market housing. The other part of this that's worth enumerating is the sheer scale of ambition here. This is hugely ambitious agenda, and that has the potential to not merely stall the crisis getting worse, but actually be transformative over the course of the next parliament. It is the housing ambition dreams are made for. That this is the first truly big announcement the party is making of the campaign that isn't a response to Trump is an even better sign that this will truly be the priority we all want it to be. Now, as an aside here from me, even though it's not a direct response to Trump, is a response to Trump, because if there's going to be additional tariffs on steel, on aluminum, on lumber, on stuff of that sort, then again, buying our own supply to build all these homes in order to maintain markets for these items, if they're not going to be purchased as much by the United States, and before other nations, we can make deals with other nations to buy more of the stuff, or to divert some of our stuff to them in terms of sales and market share. Using a lot of that material ourselves for this housing initiative, particularly with the prefab stuff, is a pretty smart idea. Way to go. That's great. I like this. I know it can be cynical about this government's housing record. Sorry, I know it. I think I'm not sure that this is I think there might be a typo there. I know it can be cynical about this government's housing record, and Lord knows it was bad in the majority parliament, and the immigration decisions taken in 22 added fuel to the fire. But this is not that government. With a new PM, a better immigration and housing policy set, and back-to-back ministers of housing who know their shit, this is a very good policy and a Liberal Party that is recommitted to best practices. The honest truth is that this is the kind of policy agenda that I've been waiting for from a Liberal for years. Something this bold, this ambitious, this all-encompassing. We have a serious plan to end the housing crisis, and Nate was right to think there was value into going, and Nate thought, I'm tripping over my tongue today. And Nate was right to think there was value in going into the cabinet even when I didn't see it. Sorry, bud. Next time I'll trust your instincts more. That's the thing about housing there. He also had some thoughts on the Paul Chang thing that I'm going to read into here, because he too was of the same view of us, that he had to go and go now. So he said, I've tried to keep the Chang story out of the pages of the site until now for a simple reason. I did not actually believe we were sincerely stupid enough to keep him as a candidate. The Liberals seem to be treating his comments as merely some form of bad joke, making an argument that is closer to an anti-cancel culture argument. It's a downright conservative case against dropping him, the idea that one terrible comment shouldn't be enough to ruin a career or a reputation. The problems with that are twofold. The first is that I don't give a shit about Paul Chang. I give a shit about the Liberal Party of Canada. And so any sort of unfairness to him, I simply cannot give a shit. And that was the thing I was mentioning yesterday. Even though it might not be personally fair to him, it's politics. There's a race. There's X number of days. You don't want to lose a day's noise. Cut him. It's that simple. Yes, it's cold. Yes, it's callous. Yes, it's probably not fair to him, especially if he did learn or he was meaning it as a joke or all that type of stuff. But, hey, you cut. You just do. The second, far more important point is that this joke isn't merely bad. It's unacceptable. If this were a male MP or candidate joking about the raping of a female candidate with no diaspora politics around it, he'd be gone. His joke was about the murder of a candidate. It's too far. If he were merely a cop, still, my response would be to roll my eyes and say it's a bad joke, but a lot of people make bad jokes. Now it's worse than that. He needs to go, and if not, he needs to be fired. I understand the what passes for logic in keeping him, but you now let this story step on a genuinely transformative housing announcement. This is a fuck up. By no means an election ended or even... by no means an election ender or even something that will likely move the polls, but it's bad and we shouldn't pretend it's not. It was bad. So fortunately, he is gone. This, of course, was written before the decision. He made the decision to step aside as a candidate, but not before an RCMP probe was announced. But yeah, it's something like that happens. It's bad. You cut. Might be unfair. Hey, you might be able to solve that later by giving him a position within the party or something later on. But you cut. You get the thing out of the news cycle and you just move on, particularly if your story of the news cycle is a huge housing announcement. You do not want anything to interfere with that, so you cut. Fortunately, the housing announcement was so big that Carney was still able to get play on the day for the housing announcement and not have his entire day be thrown off message by the Paul Chang thing. But that was maybe because of the sheer size of the ambition of the announcement, rather than anything having to do with anybody being magnanimous. But yes, you do not want to step over your message, especially one this big on that day, by keeping someone on the campaign. So again, I keep on saying those aides who advised them to stand by Paul Chang, malpractice, just outright malpractice there. Couple of other little bits of news, kits and cubs. There was a great comment by one of the kits in the chat with regard to the tariffs. Hopefully I will be able to find it where I put it, because I did set it aside because it was so good. And unfortunately, there we go. It's from Kit Cassie, who said, I don't know if Trump cares, but I think he believes Navarro has him convinced this is the way. And Kit Cassie, that would be a very astute comment, because Peter Navarro is definitely very, very pro-tariff and has the reputation of frequently being the very last person in Trump's ear. So this would not be going too far out on a limb as a guess here, if that is your theory. A very interesting thing happened as well in the United States with regard to this. There was a vote in the Senate that was a pretty important one. This is from Alexander Bolton from The Hill. Writes, a group of Republican senators voted along with Democrats on Wednesday for a resolution to undo President Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, dealing an embarrassing blow to Trump. So this would be the fentanyl tariffs. The resolution expresses the sense of the Senate and doesn't have the force of law, but its 51-48 passage is unwelcome news for the president on the very day he announced a host of tariffs. For Republicans, Senators Rand Paul from Kentucky, which is being very heavily affected by the tariffs because of the tariffs on Kentucky bourbon, for example, and Kentucky is one of the southern states that does have some pretty heavy auto manufacturing. Susan Collins of Maine, who we would expect, normally known as a moderate. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who one would expect, normally known as a moderate. And, as we mentioned on the show, would be happening, Mitch McConnell, also senator from Kentucky, of course, but someone who has, by the way, if I had not mentioned it on the show, has announced that he will not be running again for the Senate next time around. But still, I guess, planning to make Trump's life a little bit uncomfortable now that he's no longer the Senate Majority Leader for the time that he has left in the Senate. So all four of them voted to express their disapproval of Trump's tariffs on Canada a few hours after the president announced he would impose a 10% tariff on all imports and levy even higher rates on imports from the European Union, China, Vietnam, and Japan. Collins told reporters after the vote that she had serious concerns as she furrowed her eyebrow about Trump's decision to slap high tariffs on U.S. allies such as Canada. Quote, in general, one of my biggest concerns is we should be distinguishing between allies and our adversaries and not treating them the same way, she said. With so much at stake globally, the last thing we need is to pick fights with the very friends with whom we should be working with to protect against China's predatory and unfair trade practices. This is he said in a statement. Oh, this is Mitch McConnell said in a statement. Darn, I wish I'd seen his name first because I could have done the voice again. Murkowski said she did, quote, what I needed to do for Alaska. She said her constituents are worried about what Trump's tariffs are going to mean for price increases. Senate Majority Leader John Thune had urged Republican colleagues to vote against the resolution, advising them it was a political gambit by Democrats to embarrass Trump. Thune argued on the Senate floor Wednesday afternoon that the tariff against Canada is necessary leverage to push Canadian authorities to crack down on drug smuggling across the northern border. Quote, I urge my colleagues to oppose this resolution and ensure that President Trump has the tools that he needs to combat the flow of fentanyl from all directions, he said. He argued the fentanyl crisis warrants, quote, an aggressive response. Democrats framed the resolution as a plea for Trump to stop escalating his trade war with Canada, one of the nation's biggest trading partners. They said Trump's Canadian tariffs would impact an estimated 6.5 million jobs across the country. Trump, for his part, took a shot at Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, for sponsoring the resolution. Quote, Senator Tim Kaine, who ran against me with Crooked Hillary in 2016, is trying to halt our critical tariffs on deadly fentanyl coming in from Canada. We are making progress to end this terrible fentanyl crisis, but Republicans in the Senate must vote to keep the national emergency in place so we can finish the job and end the scourge, Trump posted on Truth Social. He also targeted the 4 Republicans in the hours before the vote. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul, also of Kentucky, will hopefully get on the Republican bandwagon for a change and fight the Democrats' wild and flagrant push to not penalize Canada for the sale into our country of large amounts of fentanyl by trafficking the value of this horrible and deadly drug in order to make it more costly to distribute and buy. Not tracking. That was my mistake. I misread that. By tariffing the value of this horrible and deadly drug. I think he wants to put tariffs on fentanyl sale. I'm hoping he means in the actual pharmaceutical form. Interesting. Collins and Murkowski said Trump did not try to reach out to them directly ahead of the vote. Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, as well as 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. The resolution would also undo Trump's 10% tariff on energy resources from Canada. Collins has been an outspoken critic of Trump's 25% tariff on Canadian goods, warning last month it would, quote, have a devastating impact on some businesses in her state. Speaking on the Senate floor Wednesday, Collins pointed out that, quote, the Maine economy is integrated with Canada, our most important trading partner. From home heating oil, gasoline, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products to Maine's paper mills, forest product businesses, agricultural producers, and lobstermen, the tariffs on Canada would be detrimental to many Maine families and our local economies, she said. The Canadian tariffs will definitely have a detrimental impact on the economy of Maine and on border communities in particular, she told The Hill last month. We have, for example, a major paper mill in northern Maine right on the border that gets its pulp from Canada. That mill alone, which is by far the biggest employer in the region, employs 510 people directly. I've talked to the owner of that mill. The imposition of a 25% tariff could be devastating, she warned. Paul, a libertarian-leaning conservative, has been the loudest critic in the Senate GOP conference of Trump's trade war with Canada and Mexico. He is a co-sponsor of the resolution. Quote, I have every major industry in Kentucky lobbying me against them. The cargo shippers, the farmers, suburban manufacturers, the home builders, the home sellers, you name it. Fence manufacturers, Paul told The Hill last month. He also said the tariffs were an end run around Congress. Trade is a good thing. Trade is proportional to prosperity, and so tariffs are bad economically, he told reporters Tuesday. It's a terrible idea to run a country by emergency where representatives to vote on raising or lowering taxes. Paul said tariffs are, quote, are bad for the country, bad for prosperity, bad for the economy. Our Constitution was very specific that tariffs are a tax. Taxes originate in the House, come to the Senate, and then go to the president, he says. They don't just go to the president and no one else. What kind of system would it be if all our taxes and laws were passed by one person? And that's the main reason for the objection, is that these 4 Republican senators believe that this power should remain with Congress, Congress, whether it's and the regular system. So going through the House and the Senate and then going to the president for signature. McConnell, speaking at a recent press conference in Kentucky, pointed out that Canadian authorities have already pulled Kentucky distilled bourbon from its store shelves. Quote, I'm not a fan of tariffs, he said. We have 70,000 farmers in Kentucky basically make their money off trade, export. So I think a long-term trade would be a mistake. In the statement he released Wednesday evening, McConnell called tariffs a tax on everyday working Americans. Make no mistake, goods made in America will be more expensive to manufacture and ultimately for consumers to purchase with higher broad-based tariffs, he said. At a time when Americans are tightening their belts, we would do well to avoid policies that heap on the pain. He cautioned. I like doing the meh thing. Stole that from Jon Stewart, of course. Senate Democrats hailed the passage of the bill as a big political victory at a time when many in their party feel frustrated over Trump's aggressive moves to slash the federal government and reshape global alliances. We always felt that things were going to begin turning in our direction, and they are, said Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who lauded Kane's leadership of the resolution. Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, a co-sponsor of the resolution, said the vote sends a, quote, clear message to Trump to back off from his trade war. Quote, today, the Senate sent a clear message to the president. You cannot abuse your powers to start an unjustified trade war with one of our strongest allies. Canada is Minnesota's top trading partner, but the president's tariffs are jeopardizing that relationship and the consequences may be irreversible, she said in a statement. Senate Republican leaders who opposed the resolution said it won't come up for a vote in the Republican-controlled House. They predicted it would never make it to Trump's desk. The senators want it. The House, well, Mikey Johnson probably won't even bring it up to the floor. Interesting. Yeah, it'll go nowhere in the House, and the president won't sign it, so it's not going to go anywhere, said Senator John Cornyn, Republican from Texas and advisor to the Senate GOP leadership team. So, yeah, there we go. And they're right about that. It probably will go nowhere, but we have friends, even on the Republican side in the Senate. It seems that we have friends. It seems that the strategy of affecting certain key states and certain key sectors do have the people from these sectors calling the politicians and saying, hey, you got to stop this. So the squeeze is on. It'll take some time to play out, but the squeeze is most definitely on. All right. Interesting moves going on here. Kids and Cubs, before we close for the day, because I didn't do it at the beginning of the show like I normally do, I'm going to take a little look at the polls. Again, my usual caveat, polls are not comfort, they are fuel. Just giving you the details that you need to know so that you can understand the temperature of the water in which all these sharks are swimming. There has been a little bit of movement in the polls as well, with the CBC poll tracker, and these are numbers updated this morning at 8:30 a.m. Liberals have statistically insignificant changes, down 0.1%, conservatives up 0.2%. So still 43.4 to 37.6 type area. Not much change for the other parties. The Greens down another 0.1%, but everyone else pretty much stable. In terms of the seat count, it shows 201 for Liberals, 117 for Conservatives, 20 for the Bloc, 4 for the New Democrats, and 1 for the Green, and 90% chance of Liberals winning a majority, 9% of a majority, and a 1% chance of the Conservatives taking anything there. If we're breaking down across the country, in British Columbia, the Liberals seem to have a 6-point lead. In Alberta, the Conservatives still have a 30-point lead over the Liberals, but the Liberals are polling at 28%, which is high for them in that area. Saskatchewan and Manitoba, the Conservatives have about an 18-point lead, 49 to 32, let's say 17-point lead there. So which is, again, Liberals performing pretty good in that area. And we would assume, given that the 338 has shown the Liberals picking up 6 seats in Manitoba of the 13, I believe, that are available there, that most of that, the big chunk of that 31.8 is more Manitoba than Saskatchewan. In Ontario, it's showing a 10-point lead for the Liberals here for the 122 seats over the Conservatives. In Quebec, the Liberals are leading both the Conservatives and the Bloc by about 18 to 20 points. And in Atlantic Canada, the Liberals have a 33-point lead over the Conservatives there. And once again, as we say, if you're leading in British Columbia, in Ontario, and in Quebec, the 3 most populous provinces, you're probably leading everywhere. So that's from the CBC poll tracker. From Canada, from 338 Canada, we have fairly similar numbers going on here. The projection has broadened a little bit. It was a 4-point spread between the Liberals and Conservatives yesterday. Today, it is a 5-point spread with the Liberals at 43, the Conservatives at 38. Again, the Conservatives not particularly dropping, even gaining a little bit of strength, but so are the Liberals still in this case. When it comes to seat count, the highest one for the Liberals so far on 338, 193, with the Conservatives at 125, the Bloc at 17, NDP at 7, and Greens at 1, with the Liberals having a 99% chance of winning the most seats and a 91% chance of a majority, 9% of a plurality, and with the Conservatives less than a 1% chance of of anything, minority or majority. So yeah. And then the final one that we have for you, the final aggregator, is Canadian polling, as Mr. Grizzly was talking about specifically a little earlier. They have had 4 new polls added to the mix. Main Street showing a +3, Liaison Liberals +5, Leger Liberals +6, and Nanos with Liberals +8, which has caused the Liberals to tick up 1 point in the national average, now leading the Conservatives by 7 in this one. So we have different leads, but I think about between the pollsters, but about at least 5% seems to be the minimum here. So they have the Liberals at 44, Conservatives at 37, NDP at 9, Bloc Québécois at 5, the Greens at 2.5, and the PPC at 2% in this one. And with this one, again, the seat count still rising for the Liberals. This is showing the Liberals at 202, the Conservatives at 121, the Bloc at 17, NDP at 3, and Greens at 0 in this one. So according to Polling Canada's aggregator, the Greens would be wiped out. That does not make me happy at all. That's news I do not like to see. But that is what seems to be being indicated at the moment. All right, kids and cubs, I think that's enough for today. What do you think? That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you loved listening to us, because we loved making this for you. Now remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please, 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 if you can, do tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. Now, for those of you who love our show and like to listen to us in audio format, if you do not want to miss an episode, well, you do not have to, thanks to the Ray Girl, who sponsors our pod page. That's podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there and click subscribe, well, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. You can also do that if you're watching by scanning that QR code that just appeared. Takes you right there. And we try to make it super easy for you. So thank you to all of us, all of you who do subscribe to us and listen to us, maybe on your way to work or maybe at home when you're cooking or something and you just have us on. It's or whatever way that we are in your lives, we are grateful that you make time and room for us. So thank you so very, very, very much for that. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, well, you can make like Kit Elaine and Kit Cassie and, well, encourage people to surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page where I guess advertising works, because we're growing like crazy. We're now at 15,700 subscribers. I think yesterday, we said 15,200. So that's 500 extra subscribers over the last, since the last show. So thank you so much. We know that election time is prime time in order to be able to get new people. So hopefully all of those of you who are new and checking us out are finding something that you like and then you enjoy. So please, as we keep on saying, pull up a log and make yourself comfortable. Stay a while. We're glad you're here. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, well, there is another way that you can do it. Because we like to help by offering you opportunities to help. And that is through our coffee page, what we affectionately call the Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. Because every day, no matter what's going on in the world, we always, always, always have to fight against the scourge that is dry beaver. So, if you are a concerned Canadian who would like to keep your favorite beaver moist, then how about a little contribution to our hydration fund? Technically it's our tip jar. But if you scan the QR code that just appeared above my head right there, that will bring you to our coffee page. That's coffee, spelled ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And there, if you go there and leave us a little coinage because you like what we do and you want to encourage us to do more, well, first, you earn our undying gratitude, which is valuable in its own right, but also, just letting you know, you become 17.8% more interesting at parties instantly. It just happens. By the way, tipping is also very sexy. So if you're feeling sexy, you know what to do. Thank you to everyone who does make a contribution. We're very grateful for the support that you give us. Now, kids and cubs, that's not the only way we need your support, because we love to hear from you. We know that you have got things to say about our show, or guests that you would like us to have on, topics you would like us to tackle. So please, if you have an opportunity, do write to us. TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com is our email address. Please let us know what you think. If it is criticism, please be constructive and kind. We are delicate and tender creatures, but we do want to know what you have to say, because everything you have to say does make the show better. We read everything. We're not able to get back to everyone, of course, but we do appreciate your contribution. So you can do that at TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com, on our socials at TrueEager, or TrueEager is available on Blue Sky or on Twitter. Our original home on Facebook, True North Eager Beaver. Or if you're listening to us on YouTube, right down here in the comment section, just leave us a little something, and hey, we'll be glad to hear from you. Also, for those of you who would like to donate to us but would like your transaction to be 100% Canadian, TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com is our email address to which you can send a transfer via your bank, and therefore none of the CE Tech bros who sponsor Donald Trump get a cut of your money. And hey, bonus, we get 100% of your donation too. So it's win, win, win. All right. All of your support, greatly appreciated. Let's see, because democracy is something that you do remember, kids and cubs, that, well, we are in a federal election. So if you have campaigns and candidates that you support, then why not volunteer for them? A little phone banking, some door knocking, that type of stuff always comes in handy. Also, Elections Canada are looking for poll workers for advanced polling and for election day. Elections.ca, I believe, is the website. So please go to there. These are paid positions. So if you happen to be looking to make a little extra cash, it's a good way. And plus, as I mentioned, I've done it before. It's a great day. It's a long day. It's a lot of work. Yes, it is. But you're actually helping people exercise their franchise. And there are people that are so excited at the opportunity, or people that are thinking, oh my God, it just moved. And they're so concerned that they'll not be able to do it. And you're able to help. So you get to see democracy in action and just how much people care about practicing it. It's a wonderful, wonderful day. Plus, if you're there for the vote counts, you actually get to see with your own eyes how it is they happen. And that is the best civic lesson you can get for people that try to spin the thing that the vote counts were rigged or whatnot, or you used computers and the computers were hacked. You actually see how it happens. Yes. And you can see all the layers of safeguards and protections that we have to make sure that the integrity of the vote is respected. There's a reason for which Elections Canada is one of the top 3 nonpartisan electoral bodies in the entire world, and often called in to monitor elections in other nations. Because we do it right and we do it well. So now remember, kids and cubs, friends don't let friends do democracy alone. So if you have the opportunity, please do plan your vote. Please do talk to people around you about voting. Please make arrangements to bring people with you to the polls for voting. And if you need to vote early, Elections Canada's offices are open all over the country. So you can get a special ballot that you can fill in. And so let's say you're going to be on vacation during advanced polling or out of the country, and you don't want to miss your opportunity to vote. You just have to go to an Elections Canada office with your ID, and they will give you a special ballot, and you can cast your vote. Now, Right. Now, in Canada, we typically do not register to vote. That usually happens with your taxes. But if you've moved in the last year or something of the sort, you might want to go to the Elections Canada website and just make sure that you're registered. You can do that by entering your postal code and some a little bit of information, and you can see if you are on the registration list. And if not, register at your new address. But again, if you haven't, don't worry. You can still vote because you can show up on election day with a valid ID proving your place of residence and your identity, and then be registered on the list then. So if you want to do it early, just to be sure, I always check every election just in case there's a glitch. But do that. You can. It's very easy. Also on the Elections Canada website. By April 11th, if you have not received your voter card or if it contains errors, please go to the Elections Canada website and enter correct the information, or you can call. There are numbers there to do that, and you can get your correct information. Again, if it is wrong or if you don't get a card, that doesn't mean you can't vote. Again, you just show up to your polling station. You can find out what your polling station is, again, by entering your postal code at Elections Canada. Go there with your 2 valid pieces of ID or someone to vouch for you if you're really that new, and who has their 2 valid pieces of ID and who is prepared to sign a sworn statement that you do live at that address and that you are who you are, and everything is fine. So you don't get your card, there's no need to panic. You can still vote. We make sure that we protect your franchise here in Canada. All right. And there are other ways around. If your polling station is on a campus, university campus, those will be open from April 13th to 16th so that you can vote there. I believe students that live on campus have the choice to vote either for the electoral district in which they are resident as a student, or their home riding if they happen to be studying away from home. So, and I think you need to make it clear which one you want, but those are available to you, and that's April 13th to 16th, campus voting. So please take advantage of that. If you are a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, you can vote at your military or unit base from April 14th to the 19th. If you are an incarcerated Canadian, you can vote in the establishment in which you are being housed on April 16th. Anticipatory voting, early voting stations will be open from April 12th to the 21st. From 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So you'll be able to vote there. There is a special bulletin vote for people who live in a short-term care home or in hospitals. If you're hospitalized, that will be April 20th to 22nd that you can vote there. All right. And I believe the 22nd of April is the limit, the date limit that you can do the vote by special ballot at any Elections Canada office. So there you go. And of course, for those who need services like sign language or interpretation or whatnot in order to be able to understand your ballots and cast your vote, Elections Canada also has those services for you. So like I said, we make it very, very, very easy to vote in Canada and have a whole bunch of resources. So there really is no reason not to. And of course, voting day on the 28th is the final one. So there's all the information I promised you yesterday that I could get you from Elections Canada about voting and voting early and all the ways that you can get help if you require it. So there you go. Please, if you have the opportunity to share this portion with your friends and family, or like I said, go to elections.ca and hopefully that will be enough. And here, kids and cubs, if you just to help you here, if you're watching in the chat, I have just posted that link for you there. All right. That's the democracy something that you do portion. A little longer, but I wanted to get all that information to you. Okay. It seems that words of wisdom. I'm alone, so I'm going to have to come up with something. Kids and Cubs, yesterday when I was playing that big curling match, I almost blew it at the end because I got nervous. And then I got nervous and I started throwing some shots, not as hard as they needed to be, and they weren't getting to where they needed to go. So, we won because on the final shot, I convinced myself, it's like, come on, just throw the damn shot the right way, the way you know how. Don't be afraid. And I walked confidently and I threw it and I made the last shot, which was the winning shot, which did send us into the semifinal. So my advice to you would be, every now and then you get a chance to take a shot. Don't be afraid of success. Take the damn shot. Don't be nervous. Just take the shot confidently. Know that you can do it. Right? You have everything within you that you need to be able to accomplish it. So when you get your shot, take it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy about it. Don't be coy. Don't be too delicate. Take your shot. You can do it. All right? Okay. Now it's time for me to stick the landing. So let's see if we do that, kids and cubs. I have to say to myself, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And before we go, just a tiny bit of news about Canadians who make us proud. Canada's women's 7 team won bronze at the Hong Kong Sevens after defeating France in the third place playoff game on Sunday. It's the season's best result for Canada, which moved the team to 4th place in the overall series standings, confirming their spot among the 8 women's teams that will compete in the Sevens World Championships in May in Los Angeles. Canada started the final day of competition with a semi-final matchup against the eventual champions, New Zealand, who got a 41-0 win. The Canadians rebounded quickly, delivering a thrilling 21-17 victory over France, and was the closest of all those matches in that round. Sabrina Poulin's try in the 11th minute, which was converted by Taylor Perry, put Canada ahead for good. And the team will now head to Singapore for their next 7 series stop, taking place on April 5th and 6th. So congratulations. Again, Canada, where the women are strong and the men are pretty. All right, kids and cubs. Have a most beaverific day. We will see you tomorrow with some definite coverage of what Mark Carney is going to say to respond to the tariffs. Until then, have a beaverific day, everyone. Bye.